movies aren't just about logic and plot, but cause and effect incites emotion. When you thoroughly break down why you had a certain reaction or feeling to a movie, it will always stem back to plot. Everything, including character elements, relies on plot and logic. And when something doesn't make logical sense, that isn't in respect to our world or our choices, it's within the context of the movie. And that is the truth. That is the only truth, and truth is all there is.
Your job as a writer is to solve problems that prevent you from having the payoffs you want. You're not supposed to give up and appeal to the idea that you had no choice. That's a terrible argument and you should feel bad.
I saw a lot of early comments from people saying that reviewers discussing script quality in a monster movie are idiots. Who cares? It's a monster movie. And when I see people saying that, all I hear is,
"This is a film about space wizards intended for children."
You may as well put Godzilla and Kong on Dick Wad's sign here, because it's the same argument. A bad script is still a bad script, no matter how much you want the monkey to punch things.
If we apply this logic to every movie from the Showa era to the Millennium era, excepting the original, we come to a shocking revelation. Every Godzilla movie is bad. Sure, some are better than others, with notable highlights such as Godzilla vs. Biollante, Godzilla vs. Destoroyah, and GMK Monsters All Out Attack. Sure, the Heisei era has the best out of both eras, but that's only out of sheer comparison. People only like these movies for the monster action, some of which isn't even that good. Most notable with the Millennium era, and somehow that is a measurement of narrative quality. You guys have no idea how long I've held this grudge against the criticism. It's just a monster movie. We don't need a good narrative to have a good monster movie. It just grinds my gears that people are this dense. Now, this is an old sentiment, and there's a chance people have moved on from it, I hope. But nobody is ever having this conversation because nobody ever sees the narrative potential in Godzilla movies. Just because the fights were entertaining doesn't mean the story is good, and if the story isn't good, if the plot isn't good, then the movie isn't good. Simple as that. If you fear losing enjoyment just because a film makes logical sense, then that says you don't know the first thing about storytelling.
You sound bitter.
Yes, I am bitter. When a story follows cause and effect laws, it leads to a logical plot progression that leaves viewers satisfied. Satisfaction is an emotion, by the way. It's like these people think that logic ruins emotions when, more often than not, logic is the cause for emotion. For example, Uncle Ben gets shot. Boom. Dead. Peter is sad. That leads him to becoming Spider-Man because of his unwillingness to take responsibility getting him killed, and so he takes the responsibility to make sure that doesn't happen again, leading him to fight crime, and because his powers came from a spider, it only makes sense that he takes on a spider-adjacent persona. Because Peter's experiences were unique, that led him to the most logical conclusion, which is to become Spider-Man. It's that simple. Or how about this for a change? Mark Grayson always believed that his father was just a superhero, just a normal superhero. But when he found out that he was actually an alien conqueror, and because he was raised as a human, he was raised appreciating human life, and so there's obviously that wedge that was created between him and his father, leading to a confrontation. That was the logical progression to that situation, given Mark's experiences as well as Nolan's. That is an emotional arc that both went through, and it was logical given the circumstances. Sure, you'd have to suspend your disbelief at the idea of spider powers and aliens, but that's all the suspension you have to do. The idea of suspension of disbelief is like a rubber band. The more you stretch it, represents the amount of disbelief you have to suspend. But if the stress of the pull is too overwhelming, then it will snap. The same thing will happen if people are forced to suspend their disbelief too much, especially when presented with important plot points in a story. Now apply this logic to every Godzilla movie before the Monsterverse. When viewed under this lens, the movies fall apart. Thematically, the Showa era is all over the place and becomes less of a cautionary tale against atomics and becomes a caricature. Imagine if someone made a cartoon of 9/11 or the Holocaust, making a parody out of it. That would really ruffle some feathers, wouldn't it? The Heisei era, at the very least, tries to not only keep the tone of the original film alive, but also tries its best to maintain a cohesive, linear story with genuine stakes. Whether it succeeds is arguable, but it still falls apart in some areas. There's really not much to say about it. It's inoffensive. but at least it's not as bad as the Millennium Era. The Millennium Era to Godzilla is what the Bayverse is to Transformers. It's essentially an anthology of semi-connected films about things that happen with giant monsters and stuff. Pretty much the Showa era, but without trying to be goofy. So it's just boring to watch. I remember almost falling asleep when watching Godzilla 2000. It was that bad. I dare you to watch every Godzilla movie back to back and analyze them critically as you can, and I want you to come back and tell me they're good and why they're good. Godzilla vs. Megalon, an unbridled praise. I'd be willing to bet that there are people that will defend the Showa era. Just recently I came across this post, a fan animation on Shin Godzilla depicting the original apocalyptic ending. I made this comment because it's true. I believe Godzilla has potential for a Watchmen-like end of the world story, or at least the original ending. I even pitched a Last of Us styled infection apocalypse from Shin Godzilla's fifth form at the end of the movie, which I call Godzillanoids, to a couple of people, and a person said this in the comments. A good Godzilla film is one that leaves its viewers depressed, after all. And you know what? Yes, you're absolutely right. 1954 was a depressing movie because of the despair it evoked. We're talking about a recreation of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Of course it'll be depressing. If you want a happy-go-lucky story, if you want a feel-good story, then go watch a Disney movie or a YouTube animation. I know that sounds pretentious, but you know, I'm really mad that this point even needs to be made. And this should go without saying, but there are ways to make a non-depressing monster movie. Pacific Rim and Love and Monsters were all really fun films, and because they took place in Australia, the budget was cut in half because they didn't need the CGI. Okay, it's a stolen joke, but it's a good one. Anyways, the point isn't that you can't make a fun monster movie, because that's not my point. My point is that Godzilla movies should take themselves seriously because his origin is serious, and given his recent associations with the Fukushima disaster with Shin, Godzilla being a symbol for the self-destructive tendencies of humanity is still relatively fresh in people's minds. Or at least, the minds of the people that pay attention. Cloverfield was meant to be the US's version of Godzilla given its association with 9/11, but because it didn't leave that big of an impact, it didn't stick as well, leading to an anthological franchise of semi-connected films. But I'd have the same reaction if the tone of these movies suddenly shifted from something serious to something goofy. Would I have the same reaction if Pacific Rim got darker? Probably not, unless the tone is jarring and doesn't progress naturally, as it should. Here's the thing. Giant monsters are an inherently dark concept. Monster, or monsters, comes to mainland and destroys said cities filled with millions of people. Men, women, and children all die painfully and die a brutal death because of the monster or monsters, or the debris caused by it or them. It's indistinguishable from a natural disaster, save for the fact that it's on a much larger scale. Godzilla specifically is an inherently dark concept. Making that goofy just seems disrespectful. Monster fights are just toys being thrown at each other nowadays. If you want to see that, then watch your kids, maybe, if you have any. Just do that. If not, do it yourself. Buy some toys and mash them together if that's what you want to see. Don't demand companies to pour millions of dollars into watching what is essentially throwing toys at each other. That is silly. Monster movies only started being marketed towards kids back in the day because kids took a liking to them, and the adults, in the meantime, digested the mature themes. So don't say Godzilla movies were marketed towards kids, because that was never the original intention.
This is a film about space wizards intended for children.
No, they just happen to be a part of the demographic that likes those movies. Same with monster movies. This is the exact same argument as it's just a kid's movie. It's been done before by a man much more intelligent than I am, but I'll let the long man walk you out since I don't know how to end this segment.
Your job as a writer is to solve problems that prevent you from having the payoffs you want. You're not supposed to give up and appeal to the idea that you had no choice. That's a terrible argument and you should feel bad.
I wanted to make this video as a prologue to my upcoming Godzilla vs. Kong video, which is taking forever to make. In over a week, I've only have like 4 minutes in, and I'm taking the long man approach and covering everything no matter how long it takes. It's been excruciating. Because I've been busy with schoolwork and earning me some cash on a side hustle, the progress will not be very consistent, but I will post occasionally on my community tab to keep you updated on the progress. And with that being said, long live the king.